goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Nuno Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes navigue, Nuno Mendes passe devant Quadrado, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, also known as the show as emphatic as the PSG win in Coupe de France against US Revel, although also at times as uncertain as Kylian Mbappe's future as transfer gurus are trying to one-up each other's to the scoop. Last night, as I record this on Monday after the Coupe de France match, pretty much as soon as it had ended, the rumor was started by Santi Oani on Twitter that according to his information sources, Kylian Mbappé has agreed to say yes to Real Madrid. Not that he has signed a pre-contract or anything like that, but he proposes that there's a mutual understanding that will end up in a contract. Well, who knows? Mbappé rumors are 10 a penny, and this journalist doesn't have any kind of perfect track record. He's been wrong before, and the thing about these journalists is that there are absolutely zero consequences when they are wrong. They just keep things moving and continue publishing new rumors. Not that they shouldn't. I guess I'm not hating on a person making a living, but this is the nature of these matters. So I'm not convinced personally yet. I'm not saying that it won't, or certainly that it can't happen, but this isn't the evidence that I'm prepared to believe in yet. We continue to see what happens. You know, when I record these episodes, before I start, I check if anything new has come up, you know, just so that I have as up-to-date information as possible at the time of recording, but more often than you'd think. Perhaps when I finish recording and check what's new, there's something new. Sometimes so much so that it makes the episode a bit outdated before I even upload it. There's been even times when I've had to record some new bits just to update them, and that's how it can go. So that's just to say that you might have more information when you hear this than I do, as I'm here now talking to you. So this rumor might have been confirmed, or it might have been debunked entirely. Eventually, at some point, one or another will have to happen. Just a few days ago, of course, after the Trophée des Champions match, Mbappé said that he hadn't made his decision yet at the time. Then there are some British sources that have suggested that he isn't impressed by the pressurized nature of the Real Madrid ultimatum, or indeed that he was still contemplating even a bit of a turnaround with some Premier League sides like Liverpool. Those sources are also not ruling out the extension in Paris, which is equally on the table. As things stand, I haven't seen anything conclusive one way or another. And if he goes, then he goes. I don't want him to go, but also it's a cloud with some sort of a silver lining because it could balance the squad a bit. It can enable some more flexibility in the way that the attack is lined up, and we can have all of the outfield players tracking back if needed. And from his side, yeah, I mean, I get if he goes, he has broken all sorts of records by now. So if he doesn't want to be in Paris and play in Ligue 1, then he needs to go elsewhere. Who knows? Perhaps he will find himself in the Super League or something. Those are the risks that he will have to consider. And I don't say these things with any bitterness. It just really is what it is. And if he stays after all, then, well, we continue having the best player in the world playing for us. Like I said, I'm still skeptical about this sort of reporting because all these people have been wrong before about him going to Madrid, and for these Mercato mercenaries, the competition is tough. They all want to be Fabrizio Romano in Fabrizio Romano's place, and even Fabrizio Romano got this wrong the last time around. We always knew that this would be the big talking point this January and even this spring, so here we go now. Just need to take it in the chin and keep things moving. Mind you, at this point, I don't even mean his departure. That's not something that we know yet. What we need to endure is the seemingly endless speculation and undoubtedly many, many more rumors, and it feels endless until it ends. This can't go beyond the end of June, and it could be sorted before it, but the worst case scenario is half a year now. I was talking about this online on Twitter after the match, where, by the way, you can find me at PSG Review Pod, and Eddie Raso, who writes a lot for PSG Talk, made a very good point in that there might not be a scoop after all, and Kylian might want to announce this on his own terms. And it's true. He likes to control his own narrative, and we all know he likes to hold his cards close to his chest anyway. I mean, we have been here before his previous extension with Paris, so these types of leaks might only make him vexed. He's not the one to be pushed around. I feel like he's the type of person that the more you push him to one direction, the more he becomes skeptical about it and resists it. Because for him, control matters. It matters that he is the one making the decisions. And throughout the years, the media has loved talking about his obsession with Real Madrid. But at this point, it looks more like Real Madrid has an obsession with him. Like I keep on saying, that doesn't mean that he can't go there. He can easily wear those colors next season. It's perfectly possible, but for now, I choose to slow things down and not to jump to conclusions. I mean, in Paris, he has his home, his friends from the national team have been brought in, his little brother, who he's so proud of and who means so much to him, of course he does, is starting to get his first minutes in the first team, and this project is built around him, for him to do well in this project, to be the main guy, but not the only guy, but like I keep on saying, for a football romantic in him who likes to do things the right way. Real Madrid is also still not just married with the idea of Super League, which is as unpopular as it gets, but they are the Super League, if not entirely alone, then at the very least they are in its epicenter. So a big choice for Kylian Mbappé. Big business in football, and the hunt goes on for the biggest scoop in the world sports. But enough of this topic now. This is PSG Review and my name is Mikko. Of course, we will talk about transfers and Coupe de France match, but first, something a little different. Hello and welcome. This is PSG Review, aka Thiago Motta's one solitary tear on the cheek of a super club in the state of confusion. This is something that I'm trying out since I am a PSG fan and I do like podcasting. I like talking and thinking about PSG. I actually can't really help it. This is a pretty significant moment for me, as what you are now listening to is the 100th episode of PSG Review. I started the show a little under 2 years ago on 1st of February in 2022, and I didn't make the decision to start PSG Review without a careful consideration, because the world is full of podcasts with only a handful of episodes, and once you realize how much work it is to be consistent and how you have to start from sort of zero listeners pretty much and find the whole audience for the show, which isn't always very easy. The algorithms aren't exactly on your side, and there are tons of all kinds of podcasts out there. I mean, not just football or PSG podcasts, but all kinds, and also not even everyone listens to them. So as much as I wanted to, I had to ensure that this would be something that I'd find time to do and give myself a half a season to try it out. I thought, let me do the podcast until the end of that season back then and see how it feels. And it felt great. It was a fun thing to do, as it has always been, no matter how many other things I have had happening in my life. And I wanted to do it properly. I'm a radio guy. I have done radio for well over 2 decades. I have studied it in a few different universities, did my master's on it, and later on taught it in university as well. So radio and subsequently podcasts, they mean a lot to me. I don't take them for granted. I don't start a new project willy-nilly. And while I don't necessarily identify as a journalist these days, despite having worked in that field too, journalism means a lot to me. I often critique it, but that comes from a place of love, and perhaps even more than that, a place of concern, because the level of journalism, not just in football, but also everywhere, has become very varied, to put it politely. The way our media environment is not led by the truth or analysis, but too often gossip and hot takes, which may or may not be or end up being true, but who cares, right? Because there's absolutely zero accountability, even if you were wrong, just like we already discussed with all these new rumors. It's just a bit of banter. Life moves on, new stories come up, and then you can offer some new outrageous, half-thought-out analysis on those things. It's a big circle. The values in football journalism or content production, whatever you call any of it, are at the same time quite harsh and also unserious. Some back their club no matter what the reality is. That's something I have wanted to avoid because, of course, I am a PSG supporter, but I have never been uncritical of the club structure or the owners or the players when I have felt that they have fallen short, and that, of course, happens often. It's also not a show where I only criticize them regardless. I try to consider the context and different angles to provide some analysis. thoughts that have occurred to me, usually during the week of recording. That's what it's about. Some facts and realities change, and that's why we follow them up. But my goal is to elevate the conversation if it doesn't sound too pompous. No hot takes or outrage, but an attempt to get a bit deeper and into a more interesting areas of conversation. Look, I'm indulging myself here. Please allow me. It's a special episode and this won't take forever. I'm not doing PSG review because I consider myself as some sort of an authority on PSG. I like the club, I care about it, and maybe more than anything, I'm curious to understand it. What is happening and why? What are the connecting points? I'm probably more interested in the culture and identity of the club than some XG statistic, but I don't have a problem with those either. It's a very human experience. To me, football is not just sport. It's art. It's also business, whether we like it or not. It's culture, and it's a kind of soap opera as well. I mean, I don't really watch reality TV shows, but I imagine most of them don't have anything compared to PSG, where there rarely is a dull day. And I thank you for tuning in every time that you do. Whether this is your first time ever or indeed 100th time, it's always been very much appreciated, and it continues to be that. And by the way, if you look at the PSG review feed in your podcast service, there's a chance that it would show that this is the episode 99, but very early on when I was trying to see how I could use this setup more from my phone, I accidentally turned the episode 1 into a draft after it had been out for a few months, but the only way for me to republish it would have been such that it would appear as a brand new episode, so I didn't bother to do that. But the clip earlier was from that one. And actually there's also another unpublished episode that no one has ever heard, and that's how it shall remain, because I had made one about one speculation, just in case it would turn out to be true, to have something ready to react quickly. But those speculation remained a fantasy, and I learned my lesson to not try to get ahead of myself or indeed reality. That's how I try to do the show these days. But this show, of course, isn't just me blabbering on about the story of this podcast. It undoubtedly means more to me than to you. But since we are in this together, I thought that after all these hours of analyzing and reviewing our beloved club PSG, I have earned the right to self-indulge briefly on your time as well. Coupe de France is one of my favorite competitions in football. It's been PSG's tournament for a very long time, before our dominance in Ligue 1, and I have been more bothered than you might imagine that we haven't won it in last 2 seasons. That hasn't sat well with me. I do love these early matchups against lower level teams, amateurs and such, because they're playing their hearts out. You can really see that, and you can really feel that these matches to them are the biggest matches of their lives. Of course, much less so for our players, but if you look at it like that, I would say the Champions League, that's like Grammys, in music. And these matches are like a cipher in a street corner. This is for the culture, and I love that. I think that is absolutely great. And PSG was playing against US Revel on Sunday night, and the pitch was in an awful conditions. The opponents were amateurs, and we had a heavily rotated squad. The perfect Coupe de France combination. It's a feel-good evening, and I'm not going to analyze the match too much. PSG kept clean sheet and scored 9 goals. Well, one of them was own goal, but some things are worth mentioning nevertheless. Kylian Mbappé scored 3 goals and played the full 90 minutes. Was that necessary, I hear you ask? Well, the answer is probably not, but like said, this is football culture also, so while there's certain amount of rotation, it's also good to have a respectable 11 on the pitch. It means a lot to the fans at the stadium who don't get to see these kind of matches regularly. It means a lot to the opposition, and of course I think it also means a lot to PSG and Kylian Mbappé too. And another thing is that there's a lot of hype around who is the Golden Boot top scorer of the year and of the season, and in those contests all these goals count. 1 year ago, Kylian Mbappé scored 5 goals in a similar matchup. Take those 5 goals away from his total for that year, and he's good few positions lower in those tables for top scorers in Europe and beyond. Is that a good reason then? Well, I don't know, you tell me, but it's a reality. He's insanely competitive, and that's how these players are rated these days. And I guess it has always been like that to a certain extent, but a lot is made out of this stuff, so you can't entirely blame him for that. On top of that, this actually is not a terrible time to play an extra match. The holiday has just been had and the next match is in 1 week. If this was just before Champions League or a midweek match between two tough Ligue 1 matches, yes, that'd be different. But as far as I see it, there was no harm done, and he will be as rested next Sunday against Lens as he would have been without this match, more or less. I guess if there was an injury, that would be a different thing, of course, but injuries can come even in the training or anywhere, so I don't want to problematize this too much in this particular context. He needs to rest sometimes, but I'm not sure if there was a huge need for it to be in this match. We saw Keylor Navas in goal, new guy Lucas Beraldo as centre-back with Danilo. Nordi Mukiele had a good match. Carlos Soler was there. Manuel Ugarte as well in the mix. Shane Dour got his first start for PSG and was an interesting player there. Scored a big goal towards the end also. Marco Asensio was doing his acrobatics. Mbappé, like I said, was there. Gonzalo Ramos and Kolo Muani as well. Later on, Ethan Mbappé was brought in, as was another young promise, Seni Mayulu, who also came in full effect. He brought a lot of excitement with him to the pitch. Fair play to US Revel. They did well, even if the numbers were as they were, and of course they would be. I mean, we have to be realistic, but I absolutely love seeing them giving their all in this match, and I wish them luck for the rest of the season. I was talking about the Mbappé saga already. The transfer window is open, and even before this latest, so far very much unsubstantiated or even corroborated gossip, there was another wild goose chase by the media. This time by the Brazilian media. They created a storm in a teacup by suggesting that a former Lyon player now in Newcastle, Bruno Guimaraes, would be PSG's big purchase this January, and all this by paying his release clause, which was over 100 million. That got the internet going a bit nuts for some time, but what happened then is that Guimaraes himself subtweeted Newcastle United period, he said with black and white love heart, so that was enough to cut the wings from this piece of speculation. Another Brazilian midfielder that's not yet been announced is Gabriel Mochando, who needs an operation. His case seems still a little open, and I guess PSG will want to examine him a bit better. This has been mentioned, but at the same time there were also some suggestions that he's heading to Doha for an operation, so that file needs some more fleshing out before we can count on it. For departures, the rumors still persist that Nordi Mukiele is of interest to Bayern Munich. Mukiele, of course, came to Paris from Bundesliga, and Bayern undoubtedly is a tempting option, one of the great big clubs in the world. For him, I would imagine that playing time is of the essence, because you can think that I'm exaggerating, but I think that if he gets his minutes this spring, he could be an option for next summer's Euros for France. I personally like him a lot and would love to see him play, and perhaps he will now in the absence of Hakimi for up to a month, but even beyond that, because the African Cup of Nations is not a joke and the recovery from it physically and mentally might not happen overnight. Now that Skriniar seems to miss, if not the entire rest of the season, certainly a big chunk of it, possibly the whole rest of the season, it would seem counterintuitive for PSG to decrease the defensive depth, even with the arrival of Lucas Beraldo, of course, but Kimpembe's return will be later than initially thought, and he can't be counted on for now. And of course, we want Nuno Mendes to be back, and he could be back next month or soon after, but it's clear that our backline needs options, and Mukiele can play any position there, setting aside, of course, the goalkeeper's post. If he doesn't get a fair chance this spring by Luis Enrique, then I do understand if he wants to go in the summer, if the offer is still available. Renato Sanchez has been our loanee in AS Roma, and soon he could be one in Besiktas. It's great talent, of course. Awful luck with injuries. I can only wish him the best wherever that is. For Milan Skriniar, just to be precise, the injury update is as follows. This is from the club. Victim of dislocation of the lateral peroneal tendon in his ankle, Milan Skriniar will undergo surgery next week at the Aspetar Hospital in Doha. This is this week, I think, because this was said late last week. A further update will be provided afterwards. So that's something that we will see how that goes. He will be back when he will. Recovering from an operation isn't an overnight affair. Other than these, there are no particular transfer leads that would be solid at this point. That's that for 100th celebratory episode of PSG Review. The women's team and the youth team and the academies have now also moved to the new training center, which is a big positive in creating a real club culture. I'm very happy about that. And women will be playing against Lille on 9th of January, which is Tuesday. That is tomorrow as I record. And that match is actually going to be in Poissy. There is not the new stadium that is going to come there, the small stadium, but there is a pitch with some stands there and room for people to see the match. So that is going to be the first proper match, competitive match that is going to be played in the new training facilities. Men are going to have a big match up next. That is next Sunday. They are playing on the road against last season's runner-up side Lens. That's Sunday night on the 14th, which is precisely 1 month before the Champions League is back. That is also the restart of Ligue 1 after the festive season. And later tonight on Monday, there will be a draw for the next round of Coupe de France. So I don't yet know who our opponent will be, but you might as you listen to this. You can find and follow me and the show online at PSG Review Pod on Twitter and at PSG Review on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the episodes and follow me on YouTube if you like that platform. And I'm also on Blue Sky, and if you feel like acknowledging the 100th episode landmark, you can do that by rating the show on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or even writing a small review on the Apple side if you use that. If you haven't done those already, and if you have, thank you very much. All of that is much appreciated always, but the main take-home message is that I'm grateful to you for choosing to listen to this specific show. That's all. My name is Mikko, more next time, but until that, peace.